What did I just watch? IDHBNY coming to you live and direct from Hammer Valley. It is a rainy day in my neck of the woods, and I'm sure others as well. Aston Villa 2, West Ham 0. Nuno looked at this game, gazed upon in retrospect the Manchester City draw, and thought, this gives buoyancy to my overly defensive negative football system. Let's give this a go. Paco Jemez, the voice of reason, the guy who's a positional play powerhouse, understudy of so many, who played alongside Nuno, who was the positional play powerhouse. Somebody who was big into giving it your all, throwing everything in the kitchen sink at him. Where was he today? I'm sorry, being down to Devo, that did hurt us, okay? But if it if Nuno's plan all along, you could see he was rehearsing all week to do this three in the back. But even still, I feel like it still would have wound up being, a system of overly defensive, negative football. I can't even call it overly defensive because I didn't even see a defense except for Mavropanos and Tasasi, who were both good, in my opinion. Um, Having Hermanson in goal, I'm sorry. This is going to sound like a controversial statement to make, but if we had played Areola over Hermanson in goal versus Manchester City, we would have won 1-0. If that was the way that the points were going, and Mav and Bowen just had that stroke of luck, Areola would have saved that, just like he would have been up for it today. If Nuno was to be going into this overly defensive, aka lack of solid defense, lack of midfield, lack of striking presence approach, um, we would have it would have been a lot. We would have fared a lot better. Um, Very lucky that this was not a 4-0 beat down from Villa. This was very reminiscent of how we were up against Liverpool, not giving the attack. People were saying, "Oh, Bowen was subdued because of the fact that there's the England game coming up." Maybe, I don't know. I just don't think under this system it gives any opportunity for any with no striking presence. You have Pablo on the left, Taddy, who is lacking in pace. Okay, Somerville was out this game, but I still feel like, having watched the second half of this game and the substitutions that came on, had he started with that and played us with a more attacking front forward football, because our attacking presence is our best defensive presence in games that call for it. Different horses for different courses. Um, I feel like Wilson, even though he didn't produce much in the second half and everything like that, had a bit of a stinker. Okay, first half, I think over Taddy, he would have had way more promise in his showing. Fernandez was. Uh, it's eerie how a negative style of football can start to dwindle off players and their potentials, and absolutely deplete them. Fernandez is looking, this is a guy that we were saying was eclipsing Paqueta at times, and I don't want to take away the momentum or the wind from his sails, but I feel like Fernandez is was very Paqueta-esque under like a Nuno-based overly defensive system. And granted, when I saw Paqueta play at the MetLife, right, second half coming on, Bowen got the goal, but he livened things up, in my opinion. Paqueta livened that game up. Everybody was cohesive, And this was after a summer of Potter making our boys have pancake eating competitions and learn musicals. Now, granted, that makes me even more worried about what's going to happen this summer when you have Nuno as a manager who bottles it and goes for these overly defensive based tactics that just don't work. And not even overly defensive, just nonsensically defensive based systems. What is going to happen after that summer? If even if we survive this relegation battle, which makes it the Spurs loss more underwhelming and also a concerning thing because when we come out of the break, they could come out of it with a completely reconstructive attitude and just absolutely zoom forward. There's a possibility that can happen. Doesn't look good for us. We have to go into the next couple of games with no choice but to win. I still feel like, and Traore, a guy who Nuno was very heavily advocating to come to West Ham, despite people saying, I don't know, he looked good today. If this is a guy you've been banging on about, bring him in the first half if you have these series of maladies that have come your way. Being down Somerville, Tadivo being injured. There were ways of doing this. I'm sorry, Bowen, and he was being everybody's like, yeah, he was giving it his all, and but there was just no reception. No, he's under this system. How can he? Under this system, he's dwindling off. It's just not it. We had no attack, no midfield, no defense. They were cutting right into us, and everybody's like, oh, but it's Aston Villa. Aston Villa have not been in form recently. We should have been, and oh, they're number four. They were not in form going into this game. We could have beaten them. But we laid back. We dropped deep. We didn't. We invited pressure. We basically gave them the run of the mill. They were cutting up our right hand side like nobody's business. They were just. It was surgical what they were doing. Um, and again, like I said, I would have started Wilson over Taddy because Taddy, he may be good in these cup round games, but when it comes to the get down and getting fast, Wilson may not be Mr. Johnny on the spot, but he's in there a gate crasher, a front footed, forward moving entity who, if Paco Jemez was influencing this particular game, would have been throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it. I still, even though Potts looked like a fish out of water going into this game because of maybe the how the changes were and everything like that, I still feel like he should have stayed in the game. Just played him way differently. There were also he had choices on the bench also to choose from, and had Paco Ben in the mix of things, I feel like he would have. He needs to be the primary voice of the decision making, Paco. I don't. It just it concerns me that Nuno continually does this. It's almost like he has this uncontrollable urge to do this, to absolutely drop back, drop deep, play players out of position. I saw him telling like, "Hey, Taddy, move up, back, move back," or when you move back, he moves forward, move back. Like I saw him motioning that, and it's like you're telling him to do that, but this guy is not quick enough, dude. Like, yeah. And the way that you're playing it, he's not quick enough. He's not going to be that central element. You know what I mean? He may be he may have had some good games in leading up to this and everything, but you're playing him. I don't know. I felt like there was something that needed to be different. I felt like Socek, what was he doing? What on earth was he doing? People were like, "Oh, I thought he looked good." I'm like, I don't. He wasn't that driving force that we were seeing in the past couple of games, and maybe it was the fact that it was reverting back to a type that maybe he was very familiar with, you know. And also Paco was also giving a bit of synergy to the players that hadn't previously been there, and you could tell since all of these interviews have come out. Like I'm not pontificating like I'm a knoweth on things, but I've looked in, and I really am. My football understanding IQ is not the best, but I looked into Paco Jemez. He is a give it your all, play or die football mind. I mean, just from having been a previous, teammate of Nuno's to jumping into managerial roles, you see his passion, you see what he has. He's all about giving all or nothing out on that pitch. The game is about putting the ball in the back of the net, not dropping deep and back and relying upon Hermanson, who again, if your idea was to go completely defensive in this game, your best bet would have been picking Areola, even without going attacking. Areola. I'm sorry, Hermanson had some great saves in games leading up to this. He's had a bit of confidence restored, and I'm not taking that away from him. But this game was just he didn't move, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything when it came his way. Mav was the only one that was our saving grace today. It almost feels like we don't deserve him. There was one point where Mavropanos, he did a throw in, and then the ball, it looked like it bounced off somebody's foot. Maybe they had passed it back to him or whatever. And then he scurries to the ball and gets like an assist. Here goes for an assist into the whipping into the box, almost like I don't know if it was an assist or an a shot attempt at a shot or whatever it was, but he got back in it, and somebody could have gotten on the end of that and secured a goal. Mavropanos was working everybody else's shifts this game. Oh my goodness, it makes you think. Like, do we deserve Mav? You know what I mean? Do we deserve players like this? Who put it all on the line? And to think that, yeah, okay, we were down Somerville, but guess what? There's ways around things, and there were options that he could have chosen from. He chose to revert back to type. That's all there is to it. But yeah, we have no choice but to go into these next couple of games, which are not easy, with an absolute win or die mentality. Um, Paco Jemez, take the wheel, man. Paco Jemez is Claret and Blue Army. In Paco, we trust. Nuno, come on, man. You guys were like Lennon and McCartney. You had them singing from the same song sheet, and you had this balance that worked out and harmonized with each other a bit. I'm more so Paco's tunes were a little bit more catchy than yours, but you get what I'm saying. There was the balance of defense, dropping back quick enough, and playing on the front foot quick enough. We're not quick enough under Nuno's tactics and with what the options of players that we have. But this was a doable game. We could have won. Um, very disappointed. Was looking forward to going into the international break, like sitting back, like we're things are going to be okay. It's not so bad. Spurs go down. Nope, not the case. Now we're going to be coming back with a potential Spurs coming out like a bat out of hell to get out of those relegation waters. Come on, you Irons. You can do better than that. Paco, take the wheel. Iron.